Alhamdulillah, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we were able to finish the recitation of Surah Al-Anfal and also recited a great chunk of Surah At-Tawbah. Surah Anfal, the word Anfal means the war booty. And in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He details some of the rulings related to jihad, warfare. And Surah Al-Anfal is a Madani surah. It was among the earliest of the surahs that were revealed after the hijrah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the surah very much deals with when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a lot of reference to the Battle of Badr. The Battle of Badr took place in the year 2nd Hijri, and the Battle of Badr in fact took place in the month of Ramadan, this very month that we're experiencing today. And just a brief regarding the Battle of Badr. The Muslims, they heard of a caravan, a trade caravan headed by Abu Sufyan, who at that time he wasn't a Muslim. He became Muslim later on after the conquest of Mecca. And he headed this trade caravan that was going towards Syria for the sake of trade. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala references رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ, the two trade caravans during the winter and the summer seasons. So the position of Mecca is that it's like south of Medina. So to get to Syria, you have to kind of pass by Medina. And the Muslims, newly settled in Medina, they migrated in Medina. Now they're in a state of essentially war against their former oppressors of Mecca. Because don't forget, for 13 years, the Muslims suffered at the hands of the Quraysh of Mecca. Many of the Sahaba died. Some names come to mind, Sumayya radiallahu anha, among others. And the Muslims, they decided that they're going to intercept and attack this caravan full of goods. And in that way, it'll be a win, right? A lot of goods, a lot of material, a lot of resources will be at the hands of the Muslims. So this is what they decided. However, Abu Sufyan, he somehow heard of this plan of the Muslims to attack them. So they kind of took a longer route around. And at the same time, he sent word back to Mecca for reinforcement. And the reinforcement came. And this time it was headed by Abu Jahl. So Abu Jahl was in charge of this reinforcement. And the Muslims, they found out about this, that Abu Sufyan, he took a different route. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was making dua, and he was informed that he is going to end up fighting one of these two groups, either the trade caravan of Abu Sufyan or this contingent, this army headed by Abu Jahl. And in the plains of Badr, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the day before, it was decided that the Muslims are going to fight Abu Jahl along with his army. The Muslims were around 300, 313, while the non-believers, the Quraysh, they were 1,000. So the Muslims were outnumbered something like 3-1. And all night Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was making dua for victory, for steadfastness. And when it came time for the battle, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of two reasons, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in tasbiru wa tattaqu. If you have sabr, if you have patience, and you have taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He's going to reinforce you, He's going to help you with 1,000 angels. And that's what happened when the Muslims fought the Quraysh. They were helped and aided with an army of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that nobody knows the army of Allah except Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a hidden army. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's army, the 1,000 angels, they came to help the Muslims. But as the Muslims were fighting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, again, in tasbiru wa tattaqu, if you have sabr and taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase you by giving you 3,000 angels to help you. And the Muslims, they had sabr and taqwa, they fought and they bore the difficulty of battle, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aided them and helped them with 3,000 angels. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them another promise that if you have sabr and taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will aid you with 5,000 angels. And that's exactly what happened. 5,000 angels came to help the Muslims against the kuffar. And the Muslims defeated the kuffar, the Quraysh, in that battle. And they were able to slay 70 of the Quraysh. Many of them were the leaders of the Quraysh. And they took 70 of them captive. And the rest ran away back to Mecca. And so this surah, Surah Al-Anfal, deals with this issue of the war booty. Many possessions, many swords and shields and armor and clothing, and also the captives of war. They were in the hands of the Muslims. What should the Muslims do with these things? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala details that in the Qur'an, that we don't need to necessarily get into. But just on the point of sabr wa taqwa, there's a lesson there for us. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, المجاهد من جاهد نفسه في طاعة الله أو كما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. That the warrior, the mujahid, is the one who he struggles with himself, with his own nafs, in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, today we are not in a state of war. Yes, today we don't have the opportunity to fight in jihad. And in fact, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells us, don't hope for fighting, don't hope for warfare, don't hope to fight in the battlefield. Why? Because it's not a nice thing, right? But the jihad that we can carry out, the jihad that we can participate in, is the jihad of the nafs. And the advice we find in Surah Al-Anfal is sabr wa taqwa. Sabr, patience. Patience is of two types. Sabr ala al-bala wa sabr ala al-ta'a. Sabr ala al-bala is having patience on calamities that afflict you. You live through life, somebody dies. You live through life, you lose money. You live through life, you lose health. Whatever it might be, you have no choice but to suffer. So as a Muslim, how do we suffer? How do we have sabr in times of crisis? The way to have sabr is, number one, you don't complain to any human being. And number two, if you do complain, and in fact you should complain, you complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what we learn from Yaqub alayhi salam, the father of Yusuf alayhi salam, in Surah Yusuf. Yaqub alayhi salam, he says that my complaint is only relegated for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the first type of sabr. The second type of sabr is sabr ala ta'ah. That is, you don't want to pray, waking up for Fajr is difficult, fasting in the month of Ramadan is hard, but you do it anyway, you suffer and you do it anyway. And through sabr and taqwa, having patience, whether it's on crisis, having patience, whether it's continuing to do good deeds, and on top of that, doing it with the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having taqwa, this is where victory comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will see barakah in your life. You will see victory in your life. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خير.